The proof is in the pudding.
I love pudding. Such a tasty throwback dessert.
No, the proof is that Arco Gas optimizes fuel economy by removing and preventing engine deposits. The pudding's just a metaphor. Wait, where'd you get that pudding?
Doesn't matter. What matters is that I find the proof.
What flavor is that?
It tastes like proof and tapioca.
Arco optimizes your fuel economy.
Requires continuous use depending on what you drive and how you drive. Optimizes your engine's performance from the harmful effects of deposits caused by minimum detergent fuel.
Spectrum Mobile is reinventing wireless again. Get unlimited on 2+ lines for $29.99 a month per line. No contracts, no added taxes or fees. Includes nationwide 5G. Save up to 60% with Spectrum Mobile. Get unlimited on 2+ lines for $29.99 a month. Call 855-438-2999 or visit a store near you. Offer valid for new customers on 2+ unlimited lines. Spectrum Internet required. Savings based on 2-line comparison of unlimited plans among major national carriers as of 9/2021. Prepaid excluded. Restrictions apply.
Mopping is a hassle. You have to fill the bucket, pushing a wet, heavy mop around, then cleaning the mop when you're done so it doesn't grow bacteria. A hassle on top of a hassle. Try Swiffer Wet Jet. With Swiffer Wet Jet, you start with a fresh pad and cleaning solution every time. And when you're done, you just toss the pad. Swiffer Wet Jet, the faster, easier, cleaner way to clean your floors.
It's not just Santa who's coming to town for the holidays. It's your relatives, and boy are they hungry. So stop by the Home Depot for up to 25% off appliances. Plus, save up to $750 instantly. No rebates, no hassles. Not only will you get a great deal on the fridge, you'll save enough to fill it up with food. Make the holidays yours at the Home Depot. A doers get more done. Valid November 3rd through December 1st. U.S. only. Gas appliances extra offer valid as select appliances and while supplies last. See online or associate in-store for details. It's not just Santa who's coming to town for the holidays. It's your relatives, and boy are they hungry. So stop by the Home Depot for up to 25% off appliances. Plus, save up to $750 instantly. No rebates, no hassles. Not only will you get a great deal on the fridge, you'll save enough to fill it up with food. Make the holidays yours at the Home Depot. A doers get more done. Valid November 3rd through December 1st.
Let's get ready to rumble! Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C Sports. This is Charlton with Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to everybody who loves sports. Is all fair and love and war on a beautiful November the 22nd, 2021. Grondo Deportes, Bonjour, Bitty Bitty Bitches, all fair. And Level Wars, I'd love to say welcome to the show. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton at Big C Sports said it's all fair and Level War. You can follow Big C Sports all around the world on 18 podcast applications all over the universe. Really do appreciate that. 18 podcast applications and 4 TV applications. Go to Google Podcast, Alexa Podcast, Spotify Podcast, Speaker Podcast, Apple Podcast, number 6, iHeart-Radio-Podcast, number 7, CastBox, number 8, Deezer Podcast. You can find us on Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and for some reason I always run out of breath when I get to this point. I guess I got to do more exercise. Give exercise some praise. Give exercise some praise on the beautiful November the 22nd. You can find us again, Geo Saban Podcast out of London, England, Podtail Podcast, YouTube Podcast, Hopper Podcast, Stitcher Podcast, Radio Online Podcast, Repod Podcast, and Luminary Podcast, as well as 4 TV applications, Xfinity Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Give that some praise. Man, I got to get in shape. Got to get in turkey eating shape. I love paying homage to my family legacy from Big C Sports. I'll throw in all my grandparents, my great-grandparents, from Mamo to Pop, and then my beautiful grandmother, called her Muddia, and then my grandfather Hezekiah. My beautiful mother started a Head Start program in Northern California, also helped win the Little League Championship of the universe. Give that some praise. Give that some praise. Also, my father's side, my grandfather called him Albert Curry, my grandmother Alberta Curry, and my father, former retired Air Force fighter pilot and also chief mechanic of the United States Air Force. And my brother Ty, give them all praise. I love shouting with that loud bombastic voice. Love also paying homage to my son Malcolm. Sends me stats on NBA basketball. all over it, knows what's going on inside and out. Also, my daughter Daisy would help me set up a time covering sporting events when they came to the West Coast. Give them all praise, praise, praise. Really do appreciate that with Big C Sports. As I love saying, let's get ready to rumble. I love Big C Sports Podcast. Man, but I feel like I had some turkey already. It's a lot of football coming up to you. SB-nominated Big C Sports Podcast. No scripts, no three-way teleprompters, no producer in my ear. I just do the show with my higher self. As I also love saying, I produce the show, I direct the topics, I broadcast the shows, I do all the sound effects for a Big C Sports Podcast. Love doing that. I don't do it on my own, but it's all fair and level where the agency provides that information. And then I really love doing the commercials. And then outside of what the agency does out of New York City, provide the stats, I do the storytelling. I go, Steph Curry, 4-3. That good of boys been shooting threes as he wakes up. Someone asked me today, are you related to Steph Curry? I said, yeah. It's all fair and level wire. And then I upload the show to 18 podcast applications and 4 TV applications. And they go out all over the universe. Really do appreciate it. I also love saying, as Genesis 13:15, the land that thou seest will I give you, and thy seed forever. In the book of James, chapter 4, verse 2, we have not, because we ask not. So if you want something, just ask. All you got to do is ask. The answer is either yes or no. But if you ask, at least you have a chance. And love that. Going to church over the weekend. Really do appreciate that. Also, I love paying homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. Give them all praise. Love giving praise to our veterans and our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really do help a lot of people. Sometimes we just take for granted because they're helping people, and we don't have to be the ones that do it. They're trained to do that. Really do appreciate that. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse. They cover the San Francisco Giants, several of their games when they come on in the baseball season. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight Effect TV for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like in Genesis 1:3, God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. Really do appreciate that. For ValleyHomesWeekly.com, a real estate TV show that comes on weekly, really do appreciate listing some of the top national companies that are in different regions in California. Also, if you want more information on real estate, go to the nationalrealestatepost.com. That's the nationalrealestatepost.com. If you want to find out what's going on in mortgages, go to mortgagedailynews.com. That's mortgagedailynews.com. You can find out what's going on with mortgage rates all over this country. If you need more help, just call 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. Give real estate some praise. Part of the Big C team looking to recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers to put people back to work all over this great country. Really do appreciate that. I want to say thank you to Budweiser Zero. It has 0% alcohol, 100% on this game. Sports fans, when you're watching the big game, you want to eat it with the Big C burger. It's a tasty burger and it cuts with what's all those exotic meats. And the exotic meats are all over the Big C burger. I don't even know what all the meats are. All I know is it tastes good. Really do appreciate that. So much going on in the world of sports. Thanksgiving holiday is coming up. A lot of people are traveling all over the country. Airports are getting really backed up. And so may everyone who travels, take your time. Get there 10 minutes later. It's better to get there 10 minutes later than to not get there at all. So I want to give a shout out to everybody who drives safe. All the safe drivers. All the safe drivers all over this world, all over this country. Please drive safe. You want to get there safe. I really do appreciate college football. You can have this debate about who's going to get into the college football playoffs. Oregon decided they didn't want to get in as they went up to Utah and got some duck soup. They served up duck soup for lunch for the Utah Utes. And I missed out on that game. But you can watch the FCS 2021 Football Championship Selection Show. And when you think about it, they have a field of 24 teams. And the BCS, the FCS, we talk about how can we get 4 teams. Think about that. In the Bowl Championship Series, how can we get 4 teams in? Well, in the FCS, which is a form of Division I AA, they have 24 teams. I know the BCS is going to 12 teams coming up in a few years. But the field of 24 teams competing for the 2021 NCAA Division I Football Championship, it was announced today, and the Division I Football Championship Committee, Sam Houston, they were 10-0, the defending champions and winners of the ASUN and the /WAC conference. They earned the top seed in their 13th appearance in the championship, and the Bearcats have won 21 straight contests, and so they have a good thing going. If you look at North Dakota State, the Bison, they are 10-1, is the number 2 seed, earning the automatic qualifying berth from the Missouri Valley Football Conference. The Bison are making their 12th overall appearance in the highest all-time FCS championship winning percentage of 93% of their games. So you know they've been doing some things right. And then, there's a lot of winning. We think about Alabama, how well they've dominated in Division I in the BCS era. Now, James Madison also got in as a top seed. They're 10-1 on the season. And number 3 seed after securing an at-large bid, the Dukes, they will make their 8th consecutive appearance in the championship and the 18th overall. So they've really been doing their thing. And then the school that I picked to win it all, the Sacramento State Hornets out of Northern California, in the Big Sky Conference, they rounded out the top 4 seeds after going undefeated in the Big Sky Conference. I think it's the toughest conference out there with the Montana States and the Montana as well as Boise State and Weber States. They are a very good, sound, solid football team. And the Hornets from Sacramento State make just their second trip to the FCS championships. And that's the team that I'm picking to win the national championship. Give them all praise. Give them all some praise. And they figure out how to get 24 teams in. They're not complaining about getting 4. So for people who say, well, it's hard to do it, how do you figure it out? Just watch the FCS, the Division I AA. Some other teams that are going to be in, you have Villanova, they're 9-2, secured a number 5 seed after earning the Colonial Athletic Association automatic qualifier. The Bearcats make their 14th appearance in the FCS championship. So it's not hard to do. Whenever people complain about who's going to be in the top 4, the FCS taking the top 24. And they give the home teams a chance to host a game. All you got to do is open your eyes, and it's easier if we do it with all divisions. Some of these programs, they're not going to have players going on to play NFL football or CFL football. They're not going to play pro ball. So the more they can get out of it right now, I'm sure if you gave the players a chance to opt out, a lot of them would opt in. They want to be in. I love what they're doing. They even do it for junior colleges. Montana's also in there. Montana 9-2. They're going to be the number 6 seed as an at-large selection out of the Big Sky Conference, also with Sacramento State. And the Grizzlies finished the season winning their final 5 games and will be making their 25th appearance in the FCS championship. They lost their home game to Sacramento State, and then they ended up beating their cross-state rival Montana State over the weekend. And now they look strong in the playoffs as well. East Tennessee State, they are 10-1. Clinched the 7th seed. The Bearcats won the Southern Conference title, will be making their 3rd FCS championship appearance since the 2018. And back to Sacramento State with the Big Sky Conference, you also have Sacramento State, Montana. I'm going to bring up Montana State in the top 8 seeds. So 3 of the top 8 seeds, they come out of the Big Sky Conference. Sacramento State just knocked off UC Davis. That was also ranked in the top 10 in the country. Beat them 27-6 in the Causeway Classic. And I picked that as the Northern California and West Coast game of the week because either one of those teams had a chance at winning the Big Sky Conference. And the Big Sky, outside of Sacramento State knocking out UC Davis, they had 4 of the top 10 teams in the Division I AA or the FCS. I got to go to, when you think about it, East Tennessee State. They are 10-1, clinched the 7th seed. The Buccaneers won the Southern Conference title, making their 3rd FCS championship since 2018, as I mentioned that. Just wanted to backtrack on that. Montana State also out of the Big Sky. They are 9-2. They round out the top 8 seeds, receiving the first round byes. And the Bobcats are an at-large selection after earning 9 Division I wins in the regular season. And when you think about how competitive this division is, during the previous 44 years of the championship, 22 schools have won a national title, 9 of which earned a place in this year's bracket. So I want to give the FCS just a standing ovation and a round of applause, all fair and level war. When people say, oh, it's too difficult to figure out how they're going to do it, it's not that difficult. Teams have figured out how to do it, and they've done it. So teams, when you think about it, the 2021 championship, the field consists of 11 automatic qualifiers and 13 at-large qualifiers. Think about that. When you get the Power 5, they get the championship team in, supposedly. And sometimes the championship team from the Power 5 do not get in because they go by teams with the best record. I think if you get the Power 5 league champions in there, you're not always going to have the best record because you're playing up for the competition. So 2021 championship field consists of 11 automatic qualifiers, 13 at-large qualifiers, and team pairings are determined primarily according to the geographical proximity. So anyone that says it's hard to figure it out, it's not hard to figure it out. I wish that they would figure it out for the Division I programs, what we call the Power 5, and they're going to try to get closer to it, but it's not that complicated. So teams from the same conference will not be paired for the first round games except for teams from the same conference that did not play against each other during the regular season, and those teams will have to not play each other, and they get their first round of a bye against their own in-conference team. So I really like what they're doing, and if you just look at the conference teams that are in there, in the ASUN conference /WAC, Sam Houston. In the Big Sky, you have Sacramento State. In the Big South, Kennesaw State. In the Colonial Conference, Villanova. Missouri Valley Conference football, North Dakota State. In the Northeast Conference, Sacred Heart. Ohio Valley, University of Tennessee, Martin. The Patriot League, Holy Cross. And then the Pioneer League, Davidson, as well as Southern League, ETSU, which is East Tennessee State. And then the Southland, you have UIW. So when people say, oh, it's not possible to do it, I want to give them standing ovation, round of applause. They've been able to do it. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to take what's called the former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger's words. I love saying it. I'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a week, 7 days a week. Actually, 24 hours a day, not 24 hours a week. I guess that's military time, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 18 podcast applications all over the universe. Get out the praise. Don't use military time. Give me praise. And also 4 TV applications. Really do appreciate that. So I just covered in the FCS the teams that are in. They have 24-team bracket. Some people might think that's too much, but a lot of high schools, they do that too. And it's not about people who don't want to play. If you don't want to play, you can always opt out. For people to say, oh, that's too much football. If you think it's too much football, you can always opt out. Some people think that any game is too much football as they won't let their kids play. It's all fair and love and war. But I do want to wish all of those kids some praise. And now I'm going to say, are you ready for some football? Of course you are. We're going to talk about what happened in the Power 5 over college football over the weekend. A lot of the teams out of the SEC, they played a lower schedule. But some of the teams in the Pac-12, they're playing mano a mano. I know UCLA and USC, man, I know the Trojans feel embarrassed about how many points they gave up at the Coliseum in Los Angeles. But I want to look at some of the other teams around college football. Other than, if you think of the college football, Oregon Ducks, their playoff hopes were washed away up in Utah, a team that played like it had a point to prove. And the Utah, they played harder than Oregon. In all 3 elements of the game, it was a 38-7 rout, and it didn't even feel like it was that close. This is the same Oregon team that went into the Horseshoe and beat Ohio State, scored, I think it was 42-35 against Ohio State. I may be wrong about the score, but I think it was 42-35. Man, that was not at all good for the Pac-12. Elsewhere, Cincinnati, they upped their chances of making the playoffs and becoming a top 4 seed with a 48-14 win against SMU. And then the SEC, they all kind of got used to just playing a lighter schedule, but they'll beef it up, of course, as they get into this week coming up. But number 1, right now, number 1 ranked in college football, Big C's top 20 college football teams. The Georgia Bulldogs, they are 11-0, the top team in the country. They knew his last home game of the season against Charleston Southern was going to be kind of an exhibition game for the Georgia Bulldogs with a 56-7 beatdown and a nice paycheck for Charleston Southern's, all fair and love and war. From there, Georgia's going to get ready for the SEC championship game because that's definitely where they're going to be headed. Number 2, And I think if you're Oregon, you got to wonder. This is why I like the FCS more than what the BCS does. Because the BCS goes by records. And it's all about how well you play that time of the year. Ohio State, they are number 2 ranked right now in the country. They are 10-1 on the season. The only loss came to Oregon that was blown out by Utah 38-7 over the weekend. So the Buckeyes, they blew out the Michigan State Spartans at home in a game that was never close from start to finish. Quarterback C.J. Stroud played only 3 quarters, but still racked up 432 yards passing and 6 touchdowns. So he's going to be in Heisman Trophy contention. It's all fair and level war. And then Mel Tucker, hopefully he signed that $95 million 10-year extension before the end of that contract. But he's still a good coach. That was just a game. I mean, those things happen. Alabama. Think about Alabama. They got leapfrogged by Ohio State. Alabama's 10-1. Think about that. They got leapfrogged because it's about how you feel that day. Can Alabama beat Ohio State at a neutral site right now? Probably not. The home team would probably win. If Alabama went to Horseshoe, I'm sure Ohio State would win because they're going to get a few of the home calls. If Ohio State went down to Bryant-Denny Stadium, I'm sure Alabama would win. They're going to get some calls. But this, my choice for the Heisman Trophy, I've been talking about it since he signed with Alabama, got out of the USC contract, and went to Alabama. Nick Saban, Aflac had a little bit of influence. But a lot of things about this Alabama team don't seem up to par at times. But all they do is win. When you look at some of the powerhouse teams in the past, but this is a good team. When you look at the real deal, he's a quarterback, Bryce Young. He showed why I picked him to be the Heisman Trophy winner before the season even started. I saw him as a sophomore. I saw him as a junior and a senior quarterback at the nation's top high school football program, Modern Day Santa Ana, which is in line for another national championship, as they will play Servite of Anaheim for the Southern Section State Championship, and then they'll take on one of the top teams from Northern California. So if Modern Day wins 2 more games, they'll be crowned national champion again. But Bryce Young came out of that program, Modern Day Bruce Wallace. Bryce, I'm telling you, a school record in Alabama as a sophomore, 561 passing yards, and threw 5 touchdown passes. He was 40 in a 42-35 win over Arkansas, so it was a tough game. 561 passing yards against an SEC team, and I'm telling you, Arkansas played good football against them. They combined for 1,139 total yards, all fair and level war. Cincinnati, the Bearcats, they are 11-0 on the season. If you wanted a statement win, they got it over SMU 48-14. SMU's a good team. Not the best team in the country, but Cincinnati won. But I doubt if they could run through the SEC or the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the Pac-12 if they were in those conferences. But where they are right now in the AAC, that's still a big win. And I like that they keep winning. Their offense scored its first play of the game, rolled up 544 yards, and they're most likely going to be in the Final Four. If you look at that, number 5, Michigan Wolverines. There's talk that Jim Harbaugh may be the next coach for the Chicago Bears. Who knows? But the Wolverines are 10-1. They're number 5 in the country. And their loss came at the hands of Michigan State that was blown out by Ohio State over the weekend. So it's not about the best teams. It's about matchups. But you got to look at Michigan. They did it. I mean, Harbaugh had his team rolling. 59-18 win. It's second straight on the road. The 59 points marks Michigan's most against a Power 5 opponent in the past 5 seasons. And quarterback Cade McNamara played efficiently. I mean, he had a good game, but Michigan put up a lot of points. They're a good team. Now, another team that nobody really wants to see, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I want to say blasphemy. But Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the people really want to see that brand again in the Final Four. They're 10-1. Every time they're in, they get blown out. They've even been shut out. They were blown out by Alabama. They were shut out by Clemson. They just don't play well when it comes to the Final Four. But those were the past teams. But they had a 45-0 halftime lead over Georgia Tech that seemed like they laid down, and Notre Dame goes on the roll 55-0 against a team that went to sleep at halftime. Number 7, Oklahoma State, the Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? Texas Tech gained 639 yards. And think about this. 639 yards on Texas, 541 yards on Oklahoma. On Saturday night against Oklahoma State, it took the Red Raiders 55 minutes to gain 100 yards. That's a team that was rolling, got shut down by the Cowboys. And that's impressive. So the Cowboys led to 23-0 to beat them down in the Big 12 championship, stay alive in this college football playoff hunt. Oklahoma State's a good team. But I think they're better than Notre Dame. I think they're better than Cincinnati. I think they're on par with Michigan. But if you look at their rankings, they're out of the Big 12, and they're down to number 7. But they're a lot better team than 7. Number 8, Ole Miss, 9-2, the Rebels. They knocked off Vanderbilt 31-17. Their defense giving up 454 total yards of offense to the Commodores, who now have lost 20 consecutive SEC games. So not as impressive as I think the rankings make them. Number 9, the Baylor Bears. They are 9-2 in the season. They snapped Kansas State's 4-game winning streak in a 20-10 win Saturday night. They are number 9 in the country. I'm telling you, they're a good football team, but are they really good enough to be number 9 in the country? Oklahoma Sooners, they are 10-1. Well, they lost the Baylor head-to-head competition. The Sooners got after a letdown after the 17-game win streak ended at Baylor, playing a good, very solid defense against Iowa State, to a season low of 51 rushing yards, recording 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. Oklahoma is a program that had their chances to just stay undefeated and get into the top 4 contention, but it didn't happen. Michigan State, number 11 in the power rankings. They're 9-2 in the seasons. And when you want to lose, it's like they didn't show up against Ohio State. The Spartans had little success against Ohio State, allowing 7 total touchdowns in the first half. Michigan State's first touchdown came in the fourth quarter when Ohio State was playing kind of a backup players to get them ready for some action. Running back Kenneth Walker III didn't have much success on the day, and he wasn't even with the chains. Michigan State, they struggled in that game. They were really not into it. Now, a team that I feel let down all the West Coast, they just never showed up. The Oregon Ducks, 9-2, left no doubt they were not ready for the college football playoffs by halftime of the game against Utah. 28-0 deficit, even gave up a punt return about 90 yards for a touchdown right before halftime. And it was just, they were never in the game. I know they're at the high altitude, but if you can't beat Utah after going on the road and beating Ohio State, that's why I say college football is a week in, week out thing. It's not about how good or bad you are. But Utah they were a hot team. Oregon, they have all the money you could ask for in the Pac-12. I don't know what it is about that program, because they should have won that game. They just should have. Oregon didn't do anything well in Salt Lake City but show up. I know they have 25 different kind of uniforms, but as far as playing, when you have everything in front of you, they just laid an egg. And ducks lay eggs, as far as I know. The number 13 BYU Cougars, 9-2, 34-17 win against Georgia Southern. Not really going to move the needle, but you got to give BYU some credit. They played and they won the game they had to win. Number 14 Wisconsin Badgers, they're 8-3. And when you think about it, a win against Nebraska is a win they were expecting. Nebraska's played a lot of teams close, but not enough against the Wisconsin Badgers. A 35-28 win. It's all fair and level war. Not an impressive exhibition, but Nebraska does play teams close. Number 15, the Pittsburgh Panthers, 9-2. Now, a Pitt-Virginia game was guaranteed to produce some fireworks and did not disappoint after 1,023 yards and 86 total points. Pitt clinched a first ACC Coastal title in 3 years. It was a 48-38 victory. Now, think about this. This same Virginia team that number 15 Pitt just put 48 points on, BYU scored 66 against that same Virginia team. Now, this is where you want to scratch your head. Rankings, do they really matter? Oregon went into the season, as many people thought, a Pac-12 favorite. And they were ranked number 3 in the country going into Utah. They could beat 38-7 by Utah. And Utah at 8-3 is ranked number 16 in the country. I mean, they won the game. You got to give them some praise. Give Kyle Whittingham's team some praise for winning a game that a lot of people thought they were not going to win, even though they were a 3-point favorite. But to get a team in Oregon that just came in and laid an egg, a team that went to UCLA and won at the Rose Bowl, a team that went to Ohio State and won. But think about what they did. Kyle Whittingham became the winningest coach in school history with I mean, they have some good players up in Utah, but they had a 38-7 beatdown of Oregon in dominating fashion, clinched a spot in the Pac-12 title game, and they were almost likely the Pac-12 South champions. That game is going to be played in Las Vegas December 3rd. Trevion Thomas was 3 touchdowns. I mean, I'm telling you, I just didn't understand how Oregon didn't show up. University of Texas San Antonio Roadrunners 11-0. But one more thing, I want to go back to the Utah game. This is going to be the Pac-12 champion, most likely. They may even have a repeat game against Oregon if Oregon wins the Pac-12 North. Oregon still has to play Oregon State, which beat Utah. How about those apples? But Utah, to be number 16 in the country, when they blew out Oregon, and that's all they get. They also lost to BYU earlier in the year, and they lost to Oregon State. Go explain that to anybody. University of Texas San Antonio, the Roadrunners, they are 11-0. And number 18, Houston Cougars, they are 10-1. That's a team that's on the radar for Cincinnati, but they're not gonna beat Cincinnati in the championship game. But the Cougars snapped a 5-game losing streak to Memphis, which went undefeated in conference play for just the second time in their 75-year history. Only UConn remaining on their schedule. That's going to be a big win for them also. Houston has won 10 straight in an outstanding season. They only had a season-opening loss to Texas Tech and had a 21-7 lead at halftime, but they lost that game. Number 19, Wake Forest, Demon Deacons 9-2. But they showed that Clemson's still the best team in the ACC after a 48-27 loss to the Clemson Tigers. Clemson in 1998. Think about that. The Tigers, Wake Forest, losing in this first ACC game of the season. Last one at Clemson in 1998. Clemson's running game produced 333 rushing yards, and it's the first time all season that Wake Forest did not score at least 35 points. But Clemson is the real deal. They just had a shaky start to the season. Number 20, before we take the Big C pause in the Big C's college football power rankings, Texas A&M Aggies. The crowd at Kyle Field is amazing. They're 8-3 on the season. They cruised to a dominant 52-3 win over Prairie View A&M on Senior Day in the last home game of the season at Kyle Field. They held the Panthers to 154 yards, and the SEC played down in that week. The A&M led 38-0 at halftime, and they were able to just play around with them and get that done and wrapped up in a nice, pretty bow. It's all fair and level war. So that's Big C's college football power rankings. Give them praise. We're going to take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk about some NFL football. It's all fair and level war. In the words of former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 18 podcast applications all over the universe and 4 TV applications, all fair and level war. Really do love what's happened with NFL football. And then, what a great game last night with Pittsburgh and the Los Angeles Chargers. But going through the Week 11 scores and just I'll mention some of the top players in Week 11 of NFL. We started last week on Thursday with the Patriots with a 25-0 win over the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. Over the weekend, we had the Baltimore Ravens 16-13 over the Chicago Bears. And then the Cleveland Browns got a win over the Detroit Lions that were scrappy. They're a scrappy team in Detroit, and Detroit had to turn around and play on Thanksgiving. Minnesota Vikings with a last-second field goal over the Green Bay Packers. What a game. Aaron Rodgers still had a great game on a bad toe. Miami Dolphins with a 24-17 win over the New York Jets. And then the 49ers, bang, Niner game, had to go across the country in an early game and a 30-10 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars in a game that they needed to get to 500. I think the 49ers have a lot of momentum. Just beat the Rams, then traveled across the country and beat the Jaguars. When they don't turn the ball over, they're a very difficult team. Indianapolis Colts, in a game that I called, but I didn't think they'd win by this much. A 41-15 beatdown over the Buffalo Bills. And this segment sponsored by the Big C Burger. It's a tasty burger, and it comes with, come on, you know what it is. What's all those exotic meats? And last I heard, a Colt and a Buffalo were exotic meats, all fair in Leavenworth. But what a great game. Buffalo, they've been hurting. I mean, they got beat by Jacksonville, and now they just got run over by the Colts. Texas, what a game. The Texans, 22-13 over the Tennessee Titans. Nobody but people in Vegas saw that coming. The Philadelphia Eagles with a 40-29 win over the New Orleans Saints. And Jalen was hurting them. Please, Jalen, don't hurt them. He was hurting them all over the week. And then the Washington football team got a win over the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton had 3 touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing. But that was a win for Washington to go into there and win. And Rivera and Cam Newton had a reunion where they played and won a lot of games together. Cincinnati Bengals, man, I kind of feel sorry for the Las Vegas Raiders. Beautiful stadium, Allegiant Stadium. They've had so many distractions this year, from John Gruden being let go, and now he has a lawsuit against the league of Roger Goodell. Then the tragedy with the car accident, Henry Ruggs III, and now they just seem to have lost their way, the Raiders. It's a beautiful stadium, but they're just out of sync right now. But you got to give Cincinnati credit. Going in there winning 32-13 on the road. I mean, I thought maybe the Raiders would have won that game being at home again, but, man, something's just not right with the organization. The Arizona Cardinals with a 23-13 win over the Seattle Seahawks up at Lumen Stadium, one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. Russell Wilson, obviously, coming back off the hand injury, doesn't have the same velocity on the ball. Seattle, Arizona's a good team. I thought the Seattle would have played him a little bit closer, but I think obviously maybe they got to play Wilson because he's making the money. But that hand injury probably still bothers his delivery. If you look at, they were shut out at Green Bay last week and they scored 13 points at home, scored 13 points in their last 2 games. Not very good for the offensive output. But the Arizona Cardinals, they just keep finding ways to win. The Kansas City Chiefs, what a game, with a 19-9 win over the Dallas Cowboys. And what a game that was. I mean, Dak Prescott, he was sacked 5 times. You got to look at what the Chiefs were able to do. Patrick Mahomes didn't have his best game, but when you can get to Prescott that many times, of course, the Cowboys were missing some players too, so you can't always leave it to that one player. I think everybody has their own feeling about the Chargers. The Chargers had one of the greatest comebacks, 41-37 win over the Steelers in a game that went back and forth. And to me, that's what football is all about. But I would just say, I mean, for the people in Los Angeles, I know they're not going to go back to San Diego, but this is what you heard whenever the Steelers made a big play. You believe that? The Steelers had more fans, or at least they were louder, than the fans that were cheering for the Chargers. So that kind of hurts the feeling for the players that come out and play, and fans are giving up more standing ovations when something goes against the Chargers. You can't tell people not to sell their tickets, but that's just a bad thing. But when you think about it, the Kansas City Chiefs, they're officially back. They had a 19-9 win over the Cowboys on Sunday afternoon. I think the Chiefs defense, man, they guarded by some people as the worst in the NFL early in the season, but they got to Dak Prescott a lot. The Cowboys offensive line just didn't play very well. Dak was oftentimes hit if he was throwing passes. But you got to credit Kansas City because that's a team that people say you need Patrick Mahomes to play well, and if he does, then they're going to win. And he did. I mean, he just finds a way to get out of the sack. That's what I love about touchdown Patrick Mahomes. When you think about it, there was a play where Michael Parsons stripped Patrick Mahomes at the end of the first half, and then Jaron Curse had an interception of the Chiefs signal caller, and Kansas City was creeping towards the red zone. A big return set up Dallas in good territory, and the offense responded getting close enough, but they had to kick a field goal. This is a game where Dallas did not score a touchdown. I think it's the only time it's happened this year. And when you think about it, that's the Kansas City that's going to win some games in the playoffs. I think they got the rust knocked off of them, and they show how they can play. I'm going to also go to a couple of other great players, not sticking in any form or fashion, but I'm going to bounce back to the Seattle game. Tyler Lockett seemed to be blanketed in coverage, yet Russell Wilson targeted him after rolling to the right. Good decision on Lockett, gained separation from the defender in the last second to snag on a pass for 36 yards, which set up Seattle in field goal right before halftime. I really like Russell Wilson, but something's up with his hand. We know he had the surgery on his throwing hand, so that's not going to help. But here's another quarterback I want to get your thoughts on. If you think about Colt McCoy, saw him win a game in San Francisco against the 49ers. They were up 17-0 with 9 turnovers. No Kyler Murray. They've gone on the road again and won. They did it in San Francisco. Now they did it in Seattle. No problem for the Cardinals in the first half in Seattle. Colt McCoy was 14-16, 126 yards and two touchdowns. The second of which came after McCoy dropped the shotgun pass. It was a shotgun snap pass. And then he was able to just get the ball up and throw it for a touchdown. When you think about how good he plays, that's a player that I really think he's only won, I think, 11 or 12 starts in the NFL. But they're a good defensive team. They figured out how to win on the road. And in that play, he calmly picked up the ball and found it was Zach Ertz in the end zone. That ball was actually tipped by a Seattle linebacker, but he got the chance to hold on to it anyway and get the touchdown. It's all fair and love and war. It was usually guys like DeAndre Hopkins making those plays, but Colt McCoy got to give him some praise to go on the road and play like he belongs there. Kirk Cousins had a walk-off. Kirk Cousins, he's like 50-50 against touchdown Aaron Rodgers. He appeared to throw an interception just over 2 minutes to go in a tie game, but the officials reviewed the play and determined that the pass fell incomplete. All the Green Bay Packers fans said it was an interception. But given a second chance, Cousins and Dalvin Cook directed the Vikings inside the Packers' 10-yard line, and that's all they needed. They had a 29-yard Greg Joseph field goal, and that was it, and it sealed the win for the Vikings. And they are 5-5 back in playoff contention. Green Bay is a better team, but my goodness, they have their troubles going up to Minnesota and winning. It's all fair and love and war. I'm telling you, there's something about NFL football that everybody has. It's like any given Sunday. When you think about what happened in the game on a 4th and 11, no timeouts for the Bears, they failed to convert the reverse, and then the Ravens leave Chicago with a 9-6 win, right? But on that play, Andy Dalton, because of filling up with injured Justin Fields, he launched a pass down the right sideline just before taking a massive hit. A wide open Marquise Goodman ran under and then ran into the end zone to put Chicago on top. They couldn't hold on to the lead. And even Lamar Jackson was out for an undisclosed illness. But the Ravens came back and won that game at Soldier Field. You just got to like the way the Ravens can win even when they're probably not supposed to. And I want to bounce to Aaron Rodgers. When you think about it, him to Adams, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, 7 receptions, 115 yards, a pair of touchdowns. So far from Adams, I think the most recent putting the Packers in front. Green Bay had a chance to knock away, to beat Minnesota, but they just couldn't find a way to close out that game. They fell down early, and that doesn't help you when you foul down early to a division rival. So you just got to give the Minnesota Vikings a lot of credit for finding a way to win that game. I still like touchdown Aaron Rodgers. I know he had a toe issue, so maybe that affected him some, but he still came and played lights out. That dome is loud up in Minnesota. Their fans really get into it, and when you're going to win up there, you got to take everything that you got to go win that game. It's all fair and love and war. I want to bounce around some more. When you think about Elijah Moore, beginning to show more of why the Jets used a second-round pick on him in April's draft. He made another big play on third quarter on Sunday, catching the ball over the middle and outrunning everyone on the play for 62 yards to tie things up at 14. But you have teams that are really not going anywhere. For the talk about Tua and the Jets and the Dolphins, hasn't been a great year for the Dolphins. But they're finding ways to just hang in there. They had a go-ahead score and a 65-yard bomb from Tua Tagovailoa to Mac Hollins. It seemed as though Hollins was stepped out of bounds inside the 10-yard line. But in Jets fashion, the defender really to push Hollins forward across the goal line. The Jets have always had some type of issue when it comes to them winning, all fair and love and war. But I want to go back to what happened in the Bears. Offense had done absolutely nothing against the Ravens defense through 3.5 quarters. And the Chicago was relying on Andy Dalton with Justin Fields questionable to return with rib injuries. He's going to have injuries because he's going to be sacked a lot, and he also runs with the ball, and that's going to hurt him as he tries to progress as a quarterback also. And then Darnell Mooney happened. Dalton tossed the ball to Mooney in a bubble screen. And he was a 2025th round pick. He did the rest and split two blockers and making a devastating cut. The Ravens defender was off to the race at 60-yard score, and Chicago had that lead. But we know that the Ravens came back and won that game. I want to ask anybody, think about Tyrod Taylor. This guy's had so much bad luck as an NFL player, but just finds ways to win. After one of the worst special teams blunders of the season from the Titans, the Texans capitalized on yet another rushing touchdown from the great Tyrod Taylor. This one a 5-yard scamper, which he drove from the left pylon before the defender could bring him down. Tyrod Taylor, talk about a guy that plays with ice in his veins, has to bounce around the league, but still able to get a win over the Tennessee Titans. And that's just amazing how you figure out players that sometimes people say nobody wants them, but they always find a way to win. I really love that. And I love the fact that he is like a no-quit kind of quarterback that no matter what's going on with him, he's going to find a way to play in the NFL. I want to go also bounce across the country because I predicted that Indianapolis would beat the Buffalo Bills. I think Buffalo is a little bit slogging right now. They're struggling. They need someone to pick them up. But think about what happened. The Colts taking it in, the Bills, thanks in large part to Jonathan Taylor, who I said would have a great game, had 98 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns in the first half. But his latest score came after the Bills fumbled on the kickoff and gave Indianapolis commanding 27 lead. I like Jonathan Taylor. That guy is amazing. Not the biggest running back. He reminds me so much that people might laugh. Marshall Faulk. When Marshall Faulk played in Indianapolis before becoming the greatest show on turf. See a lot of that in him. I was calling another game that makes for TV excitement. Carolina Panthers, Washington football team. It was Cam versus Ron Rivera. So Ron Rivera seemed to have so many times before Cam Newton running wild against opposing defenses. Only he's almost been on the same side, on the same locker room. Cam Newton this time going against his opposing coach. NFL's best running quarterback ever. One of them has to be. I think Randall Cunningham may be the best. Before we have a guy like, Colin Kaepernick had him, great running, passing quarterback. Deshaun Jackson, obviously. Deshaun Watson as well. Patrick Mahomes. There's a lot of guys you could say that about. But Cam Newton, obviously one of the best run-pass options in the NFL. But think about that. After leaving the game on Sunday, Cam Newton had a fake handoff turned into untouched, left around the end of 24-yard score, put Carolina ahead 14-0. 2 touchdown passes, 1 rushing, but then he was sacked at the end of the game as the Washington football team came up and made a big play. And I know everybody has this thought about, can Cam play again? Of course. So anyone that doubts him, they just really don't know football. 2 touchdowns against Arizona when he was back. 3 touchdowns against Washington. So Cam Newton, a player that nobody wanted to sign, gets signed by Carolina. And in 2 games, he's 1-1 as a starter. He didn't play the whole game against the Arizona Cardinals. But he has 5 touchdowns. 3 passing, 2 rushing. What team wouldn't want that performance? Carolina most likely will challenge for a wild card spot in the NFC. But in 2 games, hasn't had a lot of offense going with the first team. Who wouldn't want 3 touchdown passes, 2 rushing touchdowns by a former NFL MVP? So for all the guys that said, he couldn't play, he's washed up, can't throw the ball downfield, where are they now? All they can say is they don't like his antics of saying, I'm back. But give me quarterbacks that have 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Cam Newton, think about that. It's impressive. I want to take another quarterback and throw it at you. In the red zone interception, the Tennessee Titans, as the AFC's number 1 seed, should have no problem with the 1-8 Texans, right? Think about it. Ryan Tannehill throwing red zone interceptions. And here's Cam Newton, 5 touchdowns in his last 2 games. Tannehill on the play would turn the ball over the Tennessee 6-yard line, leading Houston's second field goal of the afternoon. And that's Tannehill. And no one says he can't carry his team in the playoffs. And that leads me to question, why isn't someone bringing in Colin Kaepernick, who's just like Cam Newton, a run-pass option? It doesn't make any sense that they won't do it. It just doesn't make any sense. I look at a player like Jarvis Landry, improved for touchdowns. He's fully expected to throw the ball after taking a shotgun snap on the 16-yard line. He did like what he saw downfield, so he shook it off and streaked through the middle of the defense across the goal line for a game-opening touchdown. There's a lot of big-time players making plays. Another big-time play, a 20-yard, think about this, a 20-play drive. Now, 49ers opened with a 20-play drive. They had an 18-play drive against the Rams at Levi Stadium the week before on Monday night. But the 49ers, and I like this team to be a playoff team out of the NFC West. I think they can do it on the road. I give them praise. I love what the Niners did. They went down to Jacksonville, a team that had beaten Buffalo in that same stadium. A 20-play drive just don't happen in the NFL. But when they do, it's because you have a team that can run block and throw short passes. That's what the 49ers, that's their formula. Shanahan sees that formula now. He's seen it for 2 weeks. Don't turn the ball over. But they almost end up in touchdowns all the time. Well, with the 49ers, they kicked the field goal. They had a 4th and goal from the 1, and they kicked the field goal instead. It was a 20-yarder. But they got points on the scoreboard. You got to get points, especially on the road. And during the 13 minutes and 5 seconds of the game clock, the 49ers found their formula for winning. There's gold in their heels, and they settled for 3 points. But it's a big win for the 49ers because they got off an airplane, went on the road, and they scored. And that score left them with good feelings, and they rolled up a 30-point win. It was 30-10 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. So people say, oh, it was just Jacksonville. That same Jacksonville team beat Buffalo. So don't look too far away from what their team can do. Their defense can step up at times. But I like what the 49ers are doing. There's gold in their heels. I think they're going to find a lot of gold in their heels, and they're going to find a way to win some football games and get into the playoffs. That's what I like about the 49ers. And whether they're playing at home or if they're on the road, they still have fans that carry. So that's my rundown of the NFC and the AFC over football over the weekend. And now we're ready. I know a lot of people may not think this game is exciting, but are you ready for the football? Of course you are. Down in Tampa, Florida, the defending NFL champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, taking on the New York Giants. When you think about the Buccaneers in a 2-game losing streak, doesn't sit well with the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The New York Giants, they come to town to take on Tom Brady, and they just got to get healthy. That game already kicked off at 8:15 p.m. kickoff East Coast time, and the game on ESPN and ESPN2. But I think about what this means for Tampa Bay. They just got to get right. They've got to get right, and the game's already underway, so I don't like to talk about what's happened, but they got to get right. And I will say that at the end of the first quarter, already over, both teams make the first quarter fly by. The Bucs 7, the Giants 3, headed into the second quarter. But the end of the super fast first quarter, the Bucs have it, the Giants 39 at the time, and they outgained New York 120-51 in the opening period. So you know that game's probably going to end up with Tampa Bay running away with it. And I don't know if they're going to win by a big margin, but I still feel that Tampa Bay, they have to figure out what's going on with them because they lost 2 in a row. They lost to the Saints on the road, and they lost to the Washington football team on the road that came back and beat Carolina. So they got to stay healthy. It's just a part of how Arians gets his team ready, and I think they're going to find a way to win that game tonight. They're at home. Tom Brady knows how to get things right, get his players on the same page, and they'll figure out how to do that. So I'm going to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning that game tonight. But I've been wrong before. It's all fair and level. I'm going to take what's called the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk about some NBA basketball, and LeBron James had a little blood on his hand. Was it ketchup? It's all fair and level world. We'll take the Big C Pause. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back on the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 18 podcast applications all over the universe. Really do appreciate that. Just to run down tonight's NBA schedule, I know an announcement from Northern California Sacramento Kings. They decided to move on from Walton and bring on Gentry to be the head coach for the Kings. Alvin Gentry, well respected among NBA coaches, and he will be the Kings coach now. I think they've had 11 coaches in the last 8 years, so they got to have some consistency there. But the players just got to find a way to play better. Tonight's schedule on November 22nd, Brooklyn is at Cleveland. Charlotte's going to be at Washington. Oklahoma City Thunder, they're at the Atlanta Hawks. Houston is at Boston. These games are already underway. Indiana is at Chicago. Orlando's at Milwaukee. Minnesota's at New Orleans. Phoenix, the Suns, are at San Antonio. Games already underway. And Memphis at Utah, already tipped off. And then Philadelphia is at Sacramento. That game tips off at 7 o'clock p.m. at beautiful Golden One Center in Northern California. Give NBA basketball some praise. Give it praise, praise, praise. I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about what happened in Detroit. LeBron James, how many games will he be suspended? And people are talking about the punishment for LeBron, or should it be any type of punishment at all? I mean, if you think about it, was the elbow intentional? LeBron James' terrible elbow against Isaiah Stewart in the third quarter of a game between the Lakers and the Pistons will have consequences. Both players certainly suspended. For the purposes of the discussion, LeBron James is not a dirty player, but that was a dirty play. It was almost like the Detroit Bad Boys of back in the day. He would have got beaten down by Dennis Rodman and Lane Beer and those good old boys, Isaiah Thomas. But I think LeBron James, I think he tried to do a dirty play, but I don't think he's not a dirty player. Does that make sense, or is that an oxymoron? But for the purposes, if someone had punched LeBron James in the eye and caused him to bleed, everyone would have been against that person, especially had it been a Draymond Green. Remember Draymond Green when he kicked LeBron in his lower extremity, if that makes sense to you, in a playoff game? He was suspended, and that cost the Golden State Warriors a chance to win an NBA championship, in my opinion. But when you look at LeBron James, whose actions look completely deliberate, and I think it was Bush League on his part, just reverse it. Had LeBron had that happen to him, remember the kick that cost the Golden State Warriors, Draymond Green, to be kicked out of a playoff game, and he didn't cause blood. Thank goodness he didn't. But think about it, too. When you look at the action, it was deliberate, in my opinion. The elbow was not intended to hit Stewart's eye, but that should be absolutely irrelevant. The NBA judges, you think about it, it's an important role that they play. And violence can't happen in the league. We've seen it happen too many times. Remember the brawl in the Auburn Hills? It was back in the day, and the name draws a blank right now. Changed his name to Metta World Peace after that happened. But think about it. We know LeBron James coming off an injury that cost him 2 weeks of activity or inactivity. And it's not that the league's best interest to have the most popular player out of the game for a long period of time. So I think they're playing at Madison Square Garden this week in New York. I mean, we're going to see what the NBA does as far as favoritism. If you take the reference of the 2015 playoff game, as I was talking about, Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron James played, and then the Boston Celtics, on occasion, J.R. Smith suspended 2 games for hitting Jay Crowder. That's not even talking about Draymond Green thing with LeBron. But there were punishment, can go a maximum 3 games, 2 or 3 games. It's an opinion of a lot of people. He should be suspended at least a game. Okay? It happens. He's a marquee player. But fair is fair. But I know players and fans don't pay a lot of money to go watch officials call fouls. You can suspend all the top players if you want to and hurt the attendance. But you cannot allow that to happen. It's the second ejection of the career of LeBron James. So you know he's not a dirty player. Until the day he was not known for being a violent player. And he's still not. He's still not. LeBron James, a lot like Shaquille O'Neal, is hit a lot. I'm not making excuses. He's hit a lot. A lot of players try to roughhouse against him too. But think about it. The Lakers, they need LeBron prior to the win they got in the game against the Detroit Pistons. They had lost 3 in a row. So maybe a little frustration. The next game with the Lakers will be Tuesday, which is tomorrow at Madison Square Garden against the New York Knicks. The only visit they're going to make to Madison Square Garden this year. Think about that. the most famous court in NBA history. But we're going to find out what the NBA does. I know Silver doesn't want to suspend LeBron James. It's a shout out loud if he's not at Madison Square Garden. Maybe they suspend him after Thanksgiving. Maybe they say they got to look at it more. If they look at it more, I think that makes the NBA happy because you want to see LeBron James in New York, Madison Square Garden. My opinion. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, you float like a butterfly, you sting like a bee, you rumble, young man rumble. He said, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? And Ali said, I'm so light on my feet, I'm so pretty, I can't possibly be beat. Because of these big sea burgers, they make me light on my feet. That's why I rumble, young man rumble, always rumble. Because of the big sea burgers. It's all fair, another word. My beautiful mother always says there's never evidence used for racism. All domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. As we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, we hope that you have a super fantastic day.